Strong Enough merch is now available. Go to strongenoughpod.com and check out all the stuff that you can get so that you'll have those daily reminders that you are strong enough, you are worth it. Welcome to the Strong Enough podcast, where we talk about the challenges and celebrate the triumphs of people just like you. I'm your host, Claudia. Today's guest grew up as an immigrant from the former Soviet Union and also suffered child abuse. These things led her to a place of discovering her own creative genius, and now she helps other people do the same. Please help me welcome Izolda Trachtenberg. Hello, Izolda. How are you doing today?
Hey, Claudia. I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And I have to tell you, you have already put me in a great mood because you have the best radio voice. I love it.
Thank you. I used to be a DJ, so there you go.
Well, It works incredibly. I absolutely love it. Well, I would love if you would tell the audience a little about yourself.
Oh, thank you. That's very sweet of you to ask. So I am Izolda Trachtenberg, and I am an immigrant. I was born in the former Soviet Union in a little country that's now called Moldova, and my family immigrated over a year-long process. And we landed in Detroit, Michigan, and that's where I grew up. Went to the University of New Mexico. Good. No, my sister lives in New Mexico right now. I went to the University of Michigan, and then right after that moved to D.C. area, and now I'm in New York. And I spend my time speaking on creative thinking and innovation and writing books, both fiction and non. I'm also the leader of one of the premier holiday caroling groups in the nation, the Philosopher's Tones. I have a lot of fun with that. And I have 2 kitties, and my husband and I live in Brooklyn, New York. And my favorite thing to do, and this is all in one fell paragraph, my favorite thing to do is to travel and see new places.
That was a lot. We have so much we could go through. I'm going to start with Moldova because per ancestry.com, I am a lot Moldovan. So,
oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So we're clearly we're neighbors.
That's right. Somehow.
At heart. Exactly. I love Detroit. What did you think about it growing up?
I grew up in the 70s and into the early 80s, and it was a challenging place to live at times. There were gangs, there were things like that. There was some corruption, but the city itself is amazing. There's so much culture. The people are super friendly, and anything you wanted to see or do, it was kind of like a little New York. Anything you wanted to see or do, the museums, the music scene, everything was available to you. And again, people were super, like I grew up roaming streets. That's what I did. And people were always really delightful and nice to me.
Excellent. How does it feel now that things have kind of changed there and they've gone through a lot of struggles? Does that affect you at all, having grown up there?
I honestly haven't been back for a long time. Where I have high school reunions coming up and things like that people are going, you should come, and I just can never get away. But the thing that I can tell you is that a lot of stuff that's happened through the struggle is that Detroit, it was known as the Renaissance City back when I was growing up, and it still is. For example, they've taken a lot of the places that were abandoned lots and turned them into urban gardening initiatives. So they've taken the crap that sort of got left after a lot of those struggles and turned it into something beautiful, growing and thriving. And urban gardening and also the movie industry has come to Detroit. So they revitalize and they figure out how to change what they need to change in order to not only get through, but eventually shine.
Now, talking to you, you are so well-spoken and comfortable, but you had a public speaking phobia growing up, did you not?
I did, yes. See, English is actually my 4th language. And what that meant was when we immigrated to the USA, I'd already learned a bunch of languages, but here was the first place I really went to school, and they threw me in 1st grade. There was no English as a second language program or anything like that. So I was sort of thrown into 1st grade. And they thought I was a little developmentally delayed until they found out I could do math. I just didn't know how to speak English. So the next year they had me skip 2nd grade and threw me into 3rd grade. And all of a sudden we had to do, reports in front of the class and all of that. And one such time I was reading an SRA, if you know what those are, Scholastic Reading Aptitude. There were these little color-coded cards. And so Mrs. Saperstein, my 3rd grade teacher, who was wonderful, had me stand up in front of the class and read, and I came up to a word that was Picturesque. And I said something along the lines of the chalet was picturesque, because that's what it looked like to me. And of course, the word is picturesque. And the class howled. And that started me down the path of being terrified of standing up in front of people. And for a long time, I wouldn't do it. I would take an E instead of stand up in front of people, because I was so terrified that people would make fun of me again. And it took several years for me to be able to really get over it. And now you can tell I'm a talker. So so now I'm perfectly comfortable doing it. But back then I was terrified. And it took joining a choir and starting to sing and do musical theater to help me realize that communication is a gift we offer each other. And that is how I look at it now. So no more fears. But then it was absolutely terrifying.
I can definitely relate to that. I don't recall anything specific that happened that gave me the fear or phobia, but I definitely had it. And, it reminds me of that joke, I guess, that at a funeral, most people would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy, because they fear public speaking more than death.
Yeah.
I would definitely rather speak than be in the casket, I think.
Now, yes.
Yeah, maybe then it would have been a toss-up for sure. How did that feel to have that one incident as a child affect you so intensely?
Honestly, I appreciate the question, but it wasn't just one incident. That incident was on top of a lot of things. As a child, my family immigrated. So we left the Soviet Union, a communist country where you were always told anyway, keep your head down, don't talk to anybody. You couldn't express yourself. They didn't have freedom of speech there. So really you weren't allowed to express yourself anyway. So I was already coming from this place of be careful what you say, because at any moment it could be unsafe. And then I'm a child abuse survivor. So being in a place where it doesn't feel safe to have your say, to express your feelings was already pretty common to me. So having the class in school make fun of me was sort of the cherry on top, if you will, the spoiled, rotten cherry on top, but the cherry on top. So it was a culminating factor. It was a conflagration of a number of different things that brought me to that place, and it sort of sealed the deal that that's it. I am just never getting up in front of people again, because it just isn't safe. So that was the feeling, but it was a number of different threads that led to that realization that I never wanted to do it again until I overcame it.
How difficult was it coming to another country when you were so young and having to be thrown into a completely different environment, culture, language, everything?
Some of it was incredibly difficult. Some of it was super easy. Again, a lot, yes, the kids were cruel when it came to making fun of me for my name, for where I was from, for my inability to speak English. But I got them back. I was an English major, so there you go. But yeah, it was challenging in that, how do I put this? On one level, you just don't know. And when you have questions, when I had questions, I couldn't really go to my parents because they didn't know either, right? Now, when you're a child, generally speaking, you can go to your parents for things. I actually often help them. And in fact, what ended up happening, because I ended up being a kind of a loquacious kid before the inciting incident when I stopped wanting to speak in public. My family was the first family to move in the area, so we were really told, speak English, acclimate, become as American as you can. But then other families from the Soviet Union moved there, and I became a little interpreter. They would literally drive me to schools in our school district where I could interpret for the parents and children who were just moving in, because I picked up English quickly. So on some levels, yes, it was challenging. On other levels, I was able to look at it like, this is it's an adventure, and it's an adventure in a place where once I started figuring it out, where things were safer than anywhere I'd ever been. In Israel, when we lived there during the immigration process, we were there during the Yom Kippur War. So literally living in a war zone with planes flying overhead, and you had to paint your headlights blue or black, because if a plane saw the headlights of a car, they might drop a bomb. So air raid sirens going off, things like that. And that was the challenging stuff. Moving to the USA, The challenging stuff was acclimating to the culture, but really it wasn't nearly as unsafe as living in a war zone had been. So it felt like I was able to breathe more until I developed that public speaking phobia and then had to work through that in order to come out the other side.
What gave you the courage to say, I'm going to make this change? You mentioned that you went through child abuse, you lived in a war zone, which I can't even fathom. And then you had the issue with the kids at school. So, what was it like for you when you said, no, I'm gonna try to get past this. I'm gonna be stronger and see what I can do to get through this?
There were, again, a couple of factors. I cannot take all the credit. I give a lot of credit to my teachers, actually. In school, I had a couple of teachers, Miss Wallach and Miss Hudson, who became Mrs. Gutman. And the reason I say that is because I was a very withdrawn kid after that. I was good at violin, so I was in the orchestra, and I was good at singing, so I was in the choir. But I never wanted to be someone who, I don't even know how to say this. I didn't want to be someone who stood out, if you will. And because I didn't want to stand out, I ended up getting into a place where I don't even know how to say this in a way that will work. I wanted to be the person who didn't talk to anyone. I wanted to be the person who didn't ask anyone. But at the same time, choir made me be a person who wanted to express myself through creativity. And when you get to that place, when you go, oh, you know what? I am going to express myself through creativity, then suddenly things open up in a way that I had not expected, right? So I became able to express myself through someone else's words, right? So when I was able to sing, I wasn't singing my words, I was singing someone else's words, and that made it a lot easier. But also, Mrs. Gutman, I hated to read, in part because no one ever taught me how to read English, for example, and she suggested that I read a book. She's like, try this. And I was terrified because I thought I was going to have to stand up in front of the class and do a book report. And she said, no, you don't have to do that. Just read this book. She gave me 2 books to read, The Phantom Tollbooth and Black and Blue Magic by Zilpha Keatley Snyder. And I got to tell you, they changed my life. So what happened was I started reading and ended up reading 2 books a day for my entire 6th grade. Like, I would literally go into the library. Ms. Wallach would give me 2 books. I would return the books from the previous day, and I was just reading, taking in, and I discovered Nancy Drew books. And that was amazing because I found she was outgoing, she was adventurous, she had friends, she went on these incredible adventures, she solved mysteries, and she had a dad who cared about her, which I did not. I mean, I had a dad, but he, abusive father. So because of that, I was able to see that there were other possibilities, right? That's something that I hadn't really known because in my house, it was my dad's way or the highway. He once held up a piece of white paper to all of us, to my sisters and I, and he said, I'm your father, and if I say this piece of paper is black, your job is to say, yes, Dad, it's black. What do you do with that? So in my mind, that was how a father treated his children. Whereas in Nancy Drew books, Carson Drew was supportive and a wonderful dad. So having that was amazing, having that touchstone. So anytime I find focal points or touchstones like that, that's what I hold on to in challenging times.
Did you think that was all fiction? When you were reading it, because you didn't have that experience on your own, did it feel like kind of a safe, nice place to be, but it couldn't possibly be real?
That's an interesting question, and one no one has ever asked me before, Claudia, and here's why. Because I didn't understand the difference between fiction and nonfiction when I was a kid. I remember when we came over right when Gerald Ford had become president, and then Jimmy Carter won the presidential election. We came over in 74, 7 to 76, and I didn't understand that the peaceful transition of power was possible. And so I was terrified that something horrible was about to happen because I didn't understand that this was different. This is done differently here in the USA than it's done other places where peaceful transitions of power don't really happen. So So that was a real challenge for me. When I saw fictional things happening on television, I didn't understand that they weren't real. Also, I had no one explain to me, no, this is just a story. I didn't understand that it wasn't actually, I don't know, whatever, Dynasty or whatever the show was, right? I didn't get it. I didn't understand that that was fictional. And it wasn't until later that I went, oh, none of that was real. Okay. So there aren't going to be aliens coming down from the sky. Got it. Okay, now I understand. And it became a lot easier for me to understand what was happening and separate the two as I got older.
It sounds like maybe that was a blessing then at the time that you didn't necessarily know the difference.
Yeah, in some ways. In other ways, honestly, the thing that I think fiction allows you to do, it does allow you an escape, which I think is great. What it doesn't do is necessarily prepare you for doing things in the real world. However, I have to say this, and this is something I don't often talk about, but I will share it because I think it's pertinent. There was a point at which my father was hitting my sister, and we lived in an apartment at the time that had an upstairs where the bedrooms were and a downstairs where the living room was. And I was about 8 years old and 9 years old, maybe a little bit older. And he was hitting her, and I had already started reading Nancy Drew books and things, and knew in my mind what a good father was supposed to be from having Carson Drew as a model. And my father was hitting my sister, and I just sort of started talking about what the role of a father is in the family, that it's a guide and a protector and someone who's supposed to care for their kids. And full disclosure, my mom tells me this is what happened. I actually don't remember it, but I just started talking just about what I believed the role of a father was. And he apparently stopped hitting my sister, turned, looked at me like this, and then walked into their bedroom and closed the door, and we didn't hear from him for the next, day or whatever. And that was my moment to realize that stories can really make an impact on our lives, both long-term and incredibly immediately, like it did then. And I got the notion of what a father's role is from reading these books. They were fictional, but the aspirational quality of those books is wonderful. And it saved us in that moment, because when he was on a rage, he was on a rage.
That's really powerful. How does it make you feel to know, even though you don't necessarily remember it, but
Yeah,
to
I
know
don't.
that happened and you affected that situation in that way?
I think the thing about all of us is that we all have more power than we think we do. I was 8, 9 years old, however old I was. And in that moment, I felt probably like I needed to fix things. And that's sort of my personality. I'm a fixer, right? If there's a problem, I need to fix it. So coming up with that solution, and now I teach people how to come up with solutions, creative solutions, it was crucial in that moment. So I felt satisfied, I guess, is the best way. I don't get scared as much as I get determined. I've stopped people. I have gotten involved in situations where someone is hitting someone on the street, and I'm a martial artist, and I will stop them, right? And that's just who I am. That's how I do things. And woe unto you if you hurt someone defenseless in front of me, because I'm going to make sure you stop. So that's important to me. And that's how I feel about it, is that if you can help someone who needs help, help them.
So you mentioned creativity and finding creative
Mm-hmm.
solutions, and I know that that is your passion, is you want to help people discover their true creative genius. I would
Yes.
love to hear a little about that and what led you to that.
Really, it all goes back to choir in school. I found that it was the solution to so many things, to start being creative, to start singing, to find that upwelling of my own genius inside myself. And I grew up in a singing culture, but I had never sung with other people except for my mom. And when I joined choir, I realized that singing in harmony felt magical. So I kept doing it, and I'm a professional musician now. And Why? Why? Because nothing feels like singing harmony feels to me. It feels magical and amazing and wonderful and powerful. And I look at your creative genius, mine, the person down the street, as our gift to the world, right? So why I do it is because I want to help people bring out their unique gifts. And it all goes back to childhood. I ask, like, for example, I'll ask my clients when we're trying to find their creative genius, I'll go, okay, what did you do when you were a kid? Did you make up stories? Did you bang a wooden spoon on a pot? Did you sing? Did you dance? What did you do? And once we figure that out, that's the thread that lets us go to where they are now and go, okay, that thing that you used to do, that was your natural inclination. How can we apply it to your life now? And when I see someone, especially singers, I have to admit, because I teach people how to sing, when I see someone find it, it is like no other feeling in the world because they feel like there's a recognition there. They feel like they're coming home. And being even a tiny part of helping them do that feels so incredibly satisfying because I know from then on, they're going to have a better, more juicy, more succulent life because now they can apply that creative genius to their life, to their personal life, and to their work life. And that kind of creative solution to problems, whether or not there are problems in the world like the climate crisis or problems like you need to communicate more creatively with your child about something, they can all be affected by those solutions if they come from that place of inspiration and creativity.
I'm going to tell you an embarrassing story about my childhood.
Okay.
I decided at some point that I would dress up worms in clothes. Worms.
Okay. Worms.
But then that kills them because it dries them out. So I would make
Oh.
like little tissue clothes for the worms. I don't know what you want to do with that. If you can deduce my creative genius from that situation, please do let me know. But yeah, that was,
Do you remember what made you want to do that?
I don't. I could ask my mom though. I will have to
Yeah.
ask my mom because it
Yeah.
was.
That's so fascinating. If I were to hazard a guess, I would say one of two things. One, you thought they were naked and you wanted to take care of them. So you're a natural caregiver. Two, you're a natural designer. You see the way patterns come together in a way that is better than they were before, and you're able to put things just so. So being a natural designer, being someone who wants to make everything better, that to me that's a great creative genius. Even if it might have been, you said it was embarrassing, I'm like, oh, we do all sorts of things as kids that we're like, I did that, really? But at the same time, in wanting to take care of the worms and make sure they weren't naked, it's kind of like Donald Duck always wears a shirt but never pants. And you have to and what's really funny is when you see him in cartoons getting out of the shower, he puts a towel around his bottom. But when he's dressed, he's wearing a shirt but no bottoms, right? I mean, isn't that bizarre? But see, as children, we look at that and we go, wait a minute, Donald Duck is naked. And you may have done the same. Wait a minute, these worms are naked. They have no fur. I want to take care of them. So you're a natural caregiver. I get that.
See, I love it because you took this weird, crazy thing that I used to do and you made it into something normal and lovely. Tell me what it's like for people who are struggling and then you help them find that creative genius inside themselves. What kind of transformation do people make when that happens?
It depends on the person, of course, but I have to tell you, one of the things that I most love is when I have the opportunity to see someone who started out in one place end up in another, if you see what I mean. So it is transformative. People have changed their careers. They have moved to different countries. They have started families when they thought they couldn't. They have really become artists. Some people have found within themselves that they actually, you know what, I'm going to go be a painter, or you know what, I have a book I've been wanting to write, and then they publish their book. So that kind of the coaching I do is really, it's transformative because they transform. Like I guide, but I'm not I'm not transforming their lives. And I should say, once someone feels empowered to seek out what those changes could be, then there is no limit. The only limit is their own imagination. And I've been lucky enough to be, people have written movie scripts and they've put me as a character in the script, like either by name or describing me. And it's part because it's their thank you to me for helping them realize the goal of writing a movie or writing a book. And I think that that's lovely. But the thing for me is, hold on. Water break.
All good.
I think it's lovely and it makes me feel great. But for me, the best part is seeing someone who has had a hidden dream that they haven't really talked to anyone about, pursue that dream, achieve that dream, and then move on to the next dream, because it's a cycle. Once you achieve something, that's great. But then all of a sudden, as soon as you've hit this top of one mountain, you realize there are a bunch of other cool mountains you can climb. And then the whole cycle begins again, and it becomes magical, because that's a full, juicy life.
I have to know, who do you want to play you in the movie?
Wow. That's a really good question. If I had my druthers, Jennifer Connelly would probably play me. I think she's amazing. And we both have big eyebrows and big blue eyes. So I think she's great. If I were going to, she would probably be the person that I would love to have play me. She's a phenomenal actress, and she's about the right age.
I love it. That was, yeah, because that would be a hard one for me. So
really,
I don't know.
You would be, who would play you? A younger Sarah Paulson would be great. You both have that power inside you. She's a little too old to play you now, but a younger version of her would be great.
I love it. You're just thrilling me today. Let me tell you, you are putting me, I'm on cloud 9, and
I love it.
All because of you.
Aw, thank you.
How difficult is it for some people to step out of their comfort zone, to start looking for their creative genius and really take those steps to try and make it happen?
It depends on the person. Some people go, you know what, I'm ready, and we are off to the races. And some people, it takes some time because they don't believe they deserve it. A lot of the work I do with people is very sort of primal work. Mm-hmm. The whole point of this is, do you feel like you deserve to have your say? Do you feel like you're entitled to spend time on this, whatever this is? And some of it goes deeper. Some people walk around, and I'm sure you see this through your own practice. Some people walk around feeling like they don't deserve to be here. Mm-hmm. And so spending time on that part of it, going, you know what, you do deserve to be here. You do have the ability to change your life if you want to. And I get, many of us are just trying to put food on the table. I completely understand that. I'm not asking for a transformation that takes place right now. I start with tiny steps, and I really believe small steps are still steps. So if you take the tiniest micro little step forward, that micro step forward puts you in a completely different place. And then the next day, you might take another tiny little step. So even if it's really difficult, you can make those changes. If you make them incrementally, if you do a tiny little bit every day, then by the end of 60 days, you've done 60 tiny things, which are probably 3 or 4 big things, and it is transformational. It is something that's going to make you view the world differently, even if in the moment it feels like you've made barely a dent in what you're trying to achieve.
You mentioned so many of us feel like we don't deserve it, and I completely agree with you, and it's very sad and unfortunate. Why do you think so many of us feel that way? What is causing that within our society or within ourselves to make us feel that way?
Wow, that's a great question. And I think the thing is, let's go back to birth. Okay, we're going to go back to birth. We're going to go back to the very first thing you do when you're born, right? What is the first thing you do when you're born? Do you know?
I mean, I would think you would cry, but that's probably not it.
Well, before you cry, no, it's that I'll
You
tell
have to
you, you're close. Go ahead.
you have to breathe.
Yes, first thing, right? You come out of the birth canal, and the very first thing you do once they clear out whatever gook there is, um, you breathe. You breathe in, and then you announce your presence with authority with a cry. And so we are born feeling completely entitled to breathe and to express ourselves, right? There is nothing in us that goes, I can't do this. I'm not supposed. So we're born feeling like we deserve to be here because first we breathe, we take up space, literally take up a little more space. And second, we express ourselves. And the expectation of every baby born, not conscious, but still the expectation is that someone somewhere is going to take care of them. There are some mammals that are born able to walk within the first day. We're not it. We take months and months and months of care from our caregivers, whoever they are. So we're born thinking that we are here and we're allowed to be here. Somewhere along the line, for some of us, the person or people who are supposed to take care of us don't take care of us in the way we need to. And I hate leaving this all at the feet of parents because I know parents have a hard time. We're living in challenging times, but part of this is a lot of us aren't living in communities anymore where the community can be trusted to take care of the young people. We live in places where you're told don't talk to strangers, where you're told don't trust someone you don't know. So you only really rely on the one or two people who are your caregivers, and they can't do it all. So there are people who grow up needing that care, maybe even needing extra care, who aren't getting it. And on some level, that makes you go, well, if I'm not getting the care when I'm 8 months old or 10 months old or 12 months old or whatever, then maybe I don't deserve that care. And when that happens, it becomes a real process to try and get you to the point where you go back before then and go, no, there was a point where you really believed you deserved the care. You expressed yourself, you cried, you wanted to be fed and you wanted to be taken care of, and you were. And that's what we have to hook into to remind ourselves that, yes, we do need to be here and we do deserve it and we are entitled to the good stuff. That is what lets us do that. And then we can start chipping away at some of those other challenges to the point where you go, yeah, I do deserve to be here and I do deserve the good stuff and I do deserve to have my say, whatever that say is.
I want to talk about your books a little bit because you
Okay.
said you write fiction and nonfiction. So I would love to hear what drove you to write your first book.
My coaching practice, actually, it's called Life Elements, and it's about transforming your life with the ancient elements, earth, air, fire, and water. And I kept telling people, try this, try that, try this, try that. And what would happen is my clients would go, do you have this written down somewhere? And I would start writing down the missions and the meditations that I would give them. And then people went, it'd be really great if you were to put this all in one thing. And I went, oh. And so after there are, 50 or 60 missions and meditations in the book, I went, okay, let me codify it. And I put it into a book called Life Elements. That was what drove the process, was because people were going, I would really like to have this all in one place. Can you write it down? So I did. That was how Life Elements was born. It took 4 years, but it did it.
How amazing did that feel to accomplish that?
It felt great. And it was actually before the sort of independent publishing revolution. Mm-hmm. I was an independent publisher. This was back in 2008 that I did this. And it was awesome. I loved doing it. I developed a set of workshops to teach people how to use the book, how to use the missions and the meditations. And it flew from there. And it was wonderful. I loved it.
So we got that one done. What inspired you to keep going and keep writing?
So this goes back to LiveJournal, believe it or not. Before Facebook, there was a thing called LiveJournal, which I think still exists. And I was actually trying to name, to decide, because Claudia, I have this bizarre name. And I was on LiveJournal talking about whether or not I should use a pseudonym for Life Elements, for my book Life Elements. And people were going, yeah, your name is a little weird. You should. And I said, yeah, I could probably call myself Evening Star Songbottom or something. And then, and that name, Evening Star Songbottom, I wrote it, was glibly writing it in the LiveJournal entry, and then went, Evening Star Songbottom. What who is she? And out of that one strange little line was born the Fairy Godmother Diaries series, which is my first fiction book, called The Fiddler's Talisman, about a modern day fairy godmother named Evening Star Songbottom, Evie Songbottom, who works with the musicians in New York City to help them find their creative genius. That's what the book is about. So it's a fictional version. But the fairy godmother isn't like, bing, she doesn't do that. She drinks whiskey. She wears Doc Martens. She's very, it's her job. The way I developed the whole set of stories is that it's her job to help people. She actually trained to help musicians figure out what kind of music and how to excel and all of this stuff. And so the first book was about a violinist who's at Juilliard who needed to learn how to improvise, and so to become a fiddler essentially. And that was actually a thing for me. I grew up as a classical violinist and then quit and then started playing again many years later, playing traditional folk music where you improvise a lot, and I couldn't do it. So I put that in the book, and as I learned how to improvise, so did Joanna in the book learn how to improvise. And then that took off, and there are 2 books in that series, and I'm slowly writing the 3rd, and it's a lot of fun.
I love that you kind of made this character from some of your own thoughts and integrated you into more than one character, even. Yeah. It sounds like. It also sounds like you have a lot of creative genius. So you sing, you play instruments, you write. Do you find that most of us have multiple outlets of creative genius, or do many of us just have one that we got to dig up and find?
It's a really good question. And really, it's the same as so many other facets of who we are. Some people are specialists. They're like Mozart and Einstein, right? They are great at what they're great at, but they routinely forget to put their pants on in the morning, right?
Like Donald Duck.
Like Donald Duck, exactly. I mean, it's sad, but it's true. And so he's like Einstein. How Donald Duck is like Einstein. I love it. And then there are some of us who are more generalists. We're pretty good at a lot of things, but a lot of people who are generalists get very frustrated that they're not great at the one thing. So a lot of this is sort of really looking at your expectations. You can be great at the one thing, but then you'll forget to put your pants on in the morning. Or you can be good at pretty much a lot of things and really choose to love what you're doing while you're doing it. And that's what I tell all of the people I know who are generalists. Like, I'm a generalist also. I don't have the one talent or the one skill. I tell people, really, you can love what you're doing while you're doing it, but also talent is only going to get you so far. If you practice, you're going to build the skills. And I got to tell you, skilled creatives go farther than talented creatives who never practice.
What is one thing that all of us can go out and do today, one tiny thing, to start finding our creative genius?
One thing? Okay, I'm going to try. I mean, if you want to go and do, I would say take a piece of paper and a pen and doodle. If there's one thing you can do right now, you don't have to be. I went to a figure drawing. I live here in New York City, and my husband, who is a fine artist, he's amazing. We were at the Museum of Modern Art, and they were having a live figure drawing class, and I went, absolutely, I'll go, right? and I didn't do too badly, but at the same time, there were people there who are professional artists, and I was kind of looking at myself, and one woman looked at me, she said, honey, don't compare yourself to me. Compare yourself to you yesterday. And I went, yes. So try and doodle. See if doodling is something that makes you feel a little sizzle. And if it's not doodling, then I'm going to give you a prompt word. And the prompt word is the word copper. See if you can write a sentence using the word copper. And see if that gives you a little sizzle, right? Taste. What are the things that you might do that make you go, oh, that felt kind of good? Like singing along to the radio. Do you do that? Sing in the shower. Do you do that? Ask yourself, what are the things that I like kind of doing? And then try just a little bit, the one thing. But if you want to start with something, start a doodle. Just doodle. See how that feels.
I love that. I don't doodle well. My stick figures are kind of like it's not
Like
good.
mine, like mine.
So yeah, when you were talking about the figure drawing class, I mean, it made me sweat because I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine like what I would look
Right?
like trying to do that. So I love your ideas though of trying some different things and finding the sizzle inside of you. I want to take a turn here.
Sure.
We have had a lot of cool conversation. We're going to have another cool conversation, but it's going to be totally different. And we're going to talk about tattoos.
Yay.
It's June right now that we are recording this, and I am still in long sleeves because
Wow.
I know it's still a little chilly here in Colorado. But I happen to know that you have a tattoo,
I
and
do.
I would love to hear the story behind it.
Wow. Okay. So I don't have any short stories. I wish I did. So I was back in 2000, I was sitting around with my best friend and another friend and a bunch of people at a party. And one of them went, I'd like to go to Ireland. And I went, I want to go to Ireland. And the third went, I want to go. And so the three of us, and back in 2000, we went to Ireland. And I brought, I'm a fiddler, so I bring my fiddle now, and I go whenever I can. I go to Ireland and I play in pubs, just music sessions, play Irish music. But then we went and I just fell in love with the country and fell in love with Celtic knotwork. And so fast forward a few years, I was turning 39 and went, you know what? This is such a big deal. 39 is a big deal. And my husband and I had just gotten engaged, and I kind of want to celebrate my engagement. And I went, you know what? I'm going to get a tattoo. And so I thought about it and designed a Celtic knotwork piece. It's called a triquetra. So I designed my own. And I'm also a big, huge fan of, as you might notice, blue and kind of hot pink and purple together. So I designed a tattoo that is a triquetra, which is 3 sort of interlocking half circles.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is blue, one of them is purple, one of them is hot pink. And that's the tattoo I have. So to celebrate turning 39 and to celebrate being engaged, I got a tattoo. And here's what's funny. That night that I got a tattoo, my friend and I went to do this. She was like, we're going to go to this one place in Georgetown. This is when I was living in D.C. And she goes, we're going to go to this guy. His name is Grant. I went, great. And I walked in and I looked at Grant and I went, oh, I think I made out with him once. And Petra said, what? I said, I really do think. And I said, Grant, did you used to tend bar at this place? Yes, I did. And I'm like, oh. So my tattoo artist and I had a drunken evening where we mashed years before, like 10 years before. And it was just, he was like, wait, I remember you. That was you. So, and he did a lovely job and did not charge me for the tattoo. He was like, this is on me. So I got a free tattoo out of it. And yeah, it was just, and he was super cute, which I really like. But yeah, I have to say, like we remembered each other from literally 10 or 15 years before, one drunken night when we kissed by the payphone. This should tell you how long ago it was. By the payphone in the back of the bar, we ended up kissing. So there you go. That's the story of my tattoo.
Best tattoo story ever on this podcast. Where is your tattoo, if I may ask?
Sure. It's on the outside of my left ankle.
Okay. Do we have plans for additional tattoos in the future?
We do. I have something that I say at the end of my podcast. At the very end of every podcast, I say these words: be bold, be creative, be kind. And the sort of logo to my show is kind of a rainbow look. It's kind of, again, hot pink. There's a little yellow this time, and so I want those words in those colors tattooed somewhere to remind me to always do that, to always be bold, always be creative, and always be kind. And that's the next step. I'm not sure where it's going to go. It might go on my shoulder.
Are you going to travel back to Georgetown and see Grant?
He doesn't work there anymore. He moved, and I don't know his last name. So that tells you something about me as a youngster, that I made out with a guy and I never got his last name. Oops. He was the bartender. What can I say? Anyway, so yeah, I don't know where he is, but I have a number of friends here in New York City who do amazing work, and so probably they're going to. I'm gonna talk to one of them to do it. But yeah, I know that was probably more than you needed to know.
I love it, Grant. If you're out there and you're listening or watching, contact us. We want to hear from you.
That's right. And suddenly we're on the Oprah show. Oh no. And you get a tattoo. And you get a tattoo.
Well, I'm excited for that tattoo. You know, I think all tattoos, well, for me, all tattoos have meaning. My most recent tattoo is my podcast logo as well. So, and several people got it with me, which was super cool.
That's
so
awesome.
I think that you will love doing that. Izolda, where can people find you? So if they want to get your books, if they want you to help them find their creative genius, or if they want to dig deeper into why Donald Duck does not wear pants, where can they find you?
We'll have to talk to Disney about why Donald Duck doesn't. But yeah, I'll write a letter and see if we can find the answer to that.
Love
it. IsoldeT.com is the best place to find me and also my books and the podcast. Really everywhere, anywhere you go. If you type in Izolda Tizoldat, I'm all over the place. I used to work at NASA doing environmental education for many years, and I gotta tell you, that comes up, but I'm really the only Isolde T in the world, or I'm certainly the only Isolde Trachtenberg. But I will say, if you just type in Izolda, you will get a barrage of Eastern European porn stars. So be aware and be careful. That's something to note. Izolda's become a really popular name, and I'm not sure if they're being given the name at birth or if people are just choosing it as their performance name. But Eastern European porn seems to have embraced Izolda. That's why I'm Izolda T for my last name.
The most interesting part of that story was another recent guest. Her current website is Stacy B, Stacy with an I, which used to be owned by, it was a porn website before she got it. So I don't know what you ladies are doing, but
yeah, it's bad. It's very bad. You know, it's funny. I have a dear friend from high school who is a now Tony-nominated, Grammy Award-winning Broadway composer. And back in the early aughts, he wrote a musical called The Wild Party, which is based on a 1928 poem. And I was talking to someone at work at NASA at a government facility about Andrew Lippa's The Wild Party. And I went, here, let me show you. And I typed in The Wild Party and hit enter into the search engine. And immediately it was not the Broadway version of. So the stuff that came up was Wild Party, quote unquote, but all of the porn. And I'm like, this is a government computer. Oh no. And so I'm trying to get rid of all the stuff that's coming up. And I got a visit from the higher ups going, why was there porn? I am so sorry. This is what was happening. So I had to explain why I will never type in The Wild Party without also typing in musical ever again, because you do not get the things you want to get when you do that.
That is fantastic. I'm sure it was not at the moment, but today, that is a fantastic story.
Looking back on it, it's quite funny, but then I was terrified they were going to fire me without prejudice.
Izolda, you have been amazing. I absolutely love you, and I'm so grateful that you decided to share some time with us today and talk about how we can find our creative genius.
Thank you, Claudia. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you guys enjoyed my conversation with Izolda as much as I did. I really appreciate the tips and tricks she gave on how each of us can start working to find our own creative genius. So remember, until next week, you are strong enough and you are worth it. Thank you for listening to the Strong Enough podcast. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform by searching Strong Enough. And on YouTube, we're on the Spear Talk channel. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Strong Enough Pod. If you have suggestions for an upcoming episode or a future guest, please reach out at strongenoughpod@gmail.com. Remember, you are worth it.